Alright, so let's talk about some factors that affect whether you will or will not act ethically. So, basically, what we're saying here is that in any given situation that you are faced with, there's some factors that are going to impact you and determine whether you will actually act ethically or unethically. So the first set of factors here is those individual factors, okay? So when we look at individual factors, we're saying things like how much personal knowledge you have about the situation, okay? What your moral values and kind of your own morals and values are. So do you believe that stealing is okay, or do you believe that stealing's wrong? Your personal goals and the way that you typically go about pursuing those goals. Then we get to our social factors, and that says things like, well, what's the cultural norm? What is society saying that is okay and or not okay in this situation? So does society say it's okay to steal? Actions and decisions of coworkers. So even though, within your organization, there might be a rule that says that you only get a 15-minute lunch, but everybody takes 30-minute lunches. So the actions and decisions that you see them doing impact what you are going to decide to do. The values and attitudes of significant others, so your spouses, your friends, or your relatives. A good example of this is from history. Bonnie and Clyde. Clyde's brother had participated in crime in the past, but had stopped and had a family and a wife. And Clyde and Bonnie stopped by one time to try to convince him to come rob a bank with them, and they did. They convinced him, even though his wife said no. And so Clyde's brother, who's a significant other to him, was able to convince his brother to go rob the bank. But even more importantly, what ends up happening is Clyde's brother's wife, or spouse, who had said that she didn't want him to go rob the bank, she ends up going with them. So the four of them go to rob this bank because her thought process was, I would rather participate in helping you rob the bank and help keep you safe so that you come back to my family, rather than you go off and I not be there to help you and you get caught. And so even though her value and attitude from the get-go was, no, you're not doing this, when it was clear that he was still going to do it, even though she had a value and attitude of that robbing a bank was wrong, she went ahead and wanted to join. The use of the internet can impact that, and in general, internet is impacting the way our values and attitudes towards things, as it's easier to share what our deep down beliefs are to a mass audience. And then the last one is opportunity, and it says just the actual presence of an opportunity or a situation to be able to act unethically impacts whether you will or will not act unethically, and the degree of enforcement of company policies, procedures, and ethical codes. So I have a little scenario, and in this scenario, let's say that you're in the classroom with me, and I bring in $1 million and I set it on the desk because my last name's Rich and I want you guys to know what it's like to be like me. So I bring in this money, I set it there, and I leave for an hour. And the question is, how many of you will act unethically in that situation? How many of you will take some of my money? Obviously we're not here in the classroom, so you can't see what your other people are thinking, but I would venture to guess, because I've done this in the classroom many times, that it's 50% or more who would actually end up acting unethically. So let's talk through that. First of all, your individual factor says, do you believe that theft's wrong? And from my experience, that's typically 90 to 95%. There's the one or two people very randomly who will say that they feel like theft's okay. But that's not normal. So most of us feel like we have individual values that view theft or stealing as wrong. Social factors, 100% realize that society as a whole, and we have laws that say theft or stealing is wrong. Okay, so we've got almost 100% of you individually saying that stealing and theft's wrong. We got 100% that know that there's a societal norm that says theft is wrong. So our individual factor says it's no. Our social factor says no, we're not going to steal. However, when presented with the opportunity, $1 million sitting in front of you in that room and nobody watching you, it turns out about 50% of people will take some money. And then they'll try to justify it, and they'll say, well, you shouldn't have left it there, or even those who don't take money, they're like, I'm not going to take any. And well, let's talk about that further. You're not taking any, but are you stopping anyone from taking it? Are you going to, when someone shows up and they start questioning people, are you going to tell who did take some money? Because if you're not going to do those things, you're still acting unethically, because you're protecting people who committed a crime or acted unethically. So it turns out when we have the opportunity to act unethically, about 50% of people will actually act unethically, regardless of their individual or social factors that affect ethical behavior. So with that in mind, the single greatest thing we can do to prevent unethical behavior is remove which of these factors, or I guess focus on which factor, and thereby remove what. And so we want to remove opportunities. One of the ways that we do that, and it kind of talks about that, is the degree of enforcement of company policies. So I'm a huge believer in that you don't create a rule if you're not actually gonna follow the rule. So here at Blinn College, we have an attendance policy. Well, if we have an attendance policy, then I follow the attendance policy, because there's no point in creating a rule that we're not going to follow. Likewise, let's say, for years and years it was known that if you wanted to smoke marijuana, you would go to Amsterdam, because even though it was illegal in Amsterdam, they didn't enforce that law. The same thing with speed limits. The speed limit is 70. That means that you're not supposed to go above 70, but you don't get pulled over if you go 72. So we don't enforce that rule. And so one of the ways that we have to reduce opportunity is by enforcing the rules that we do have. Creating procedures, policies, ethical codes, those are all ways that we can help reduce opportunity as well. And that will be it for this lecture, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.